Time to dance here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, Soren Petro back with you talking Chiefs football tonight. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember we stream live normally on a Tuesday. I think it was a Wednesday last week. Normally Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Central, if you want to be a part of the live stream. We're on all the major players, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. I don't know, probably a few others I don't even know about. You can catch us live Tuesdays, 8 p.m. when we stream. Much to get to today. Does the win in Vegas mean it's all fixed for the Chiefs? Why was the offense better? What should we expect from Rashee Rice moving forward? How about Travis Kelce? Can they still ride Travis Kelce? Does the defense have problems stopping the run? Where will Andy Reid rank all time when it's all said and done? Are these Green Bay Packers actually a dangerous bunch? And our predictions for Sunday. It's all coming up right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. The Kansas City Chiefs are winners. Still not the number one seed, although they were for a couple of hours waiting for the Baltimore Ravens to play. However, they are off and running now. If they can get a win against the Packers, they will actually move back into that number one seed. Let's start right there, Jeff, with the win, with scoring 31 points. We talked about, I think it was their last 3 games under 20 points, for their last 5 under 20 points, 31 points, double-digit win. Their usual come from behind, double-digit success. Is it all fixed with these Kansas City Chiefs?
Eric's the math guy here, so I'll let him delve deeper into this than I will, but I know enough to know that if you have 3 good offensive games and 8 mediocre offensive games, it's probably safe to assume you've got some bad games left in you or some disappointing games left in you. So I won't go too far down the road of talking about how great the Chiefs are now, offensively at least. And obviously playing an AFC West team, it's not a coincidence, I think, that they look good against the Chargers, look good against the Raiders. They know these teams very well. But I was definitely encouraged by the changes in the offense. I thought that they did some things that we've been asking them to do, simplifying some things. Maybe that had a lot to do with Kadarius Toney not being available and Mecole Hardman still being out, fewer bodies to less mouths to feed in the offense, if you will. But screen game was nice to see. Shorter passes, you think about it, there weren't a whole lot of downfield throws in this game, a lot more run and catch type opportunities, which I think they have to do. So I give them credit for that, but we'll see what happens next week.
Eric, you and I were talking about it. All those things that Jeff just said, I think we would all agree on that there's a plan to what they're doing, and they were all good things, but were they all just because guys were out? There was no Kadarius Toney to mix in there and soak up, opportunities for the football. Did this happen? Did the right thing happen, but for the wrong reason?
Yeah, I always think that there's a little bit of overprescription when we see something good happen. I'm certainly not immune from that. When you watch, you look at Frank Reich getting fired this week, for example. A lot of great decisions he made early in those Indianapolis years, and now all of a sudden he's not good enough to coach a second team to the conclusion of a season in consecutive years. So you go back and look and you try to go back and examine, like, was he a function of circumstance or was he actually doing the right thing? And it gets muddy. I think that the same thing can be said for Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs, where, I think for the most part, they're awesome and well above average. But part of me is a little bit worried that they're getting Rashee Rice, for example, involved, Travis Kelce involved, because they don't have any other options. The only thing that pulls me back here is this idea of course, that we've seen this using, whether it's coaching models and stuff like that. Like, Andy Reid does save his best for games that matter most. And in some ways, you could also argue that not only were Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce used a lot on Sunday because they didn't have other options, but they were also used because they were down 14-0 before a blink of an eye, and they actually had to start playing the good stuff in the middle of that game. So I'm with Jeff. I don't think the offense. I think the team is fine, and I've always said that this is a Super Bowl team, caliber team. But I think that the offense isn't out of the woods yet.
Not out of the woods yet. Okay. So why were they better, Jeff?
Well, like I said, I think they did some things, especially with Rashee Rice. I mean, he had a big game, but you look at the routes he ran with a lot of shallow crosses, a lot of quick hitches. Did the same thing with Skyy Moore. There was a lot more get the ball out of your hands type plays, a lot more downhill running, screen game with Pacheco. They threw in a trick play to Kelce. And I think the Raiders didn't have a great game plan. They had a really bizarre approach to covering Kelce that you thought they would mirror what everybody else did, which is try to take him away. And granted, they moved him around more, did some things with him schematically that helped with that. But I think opponent helped. I think that they recognize that sometimes it's not about calling plays, it's about the players you're using. And if they were forced to have to use Rashee Rice more and Skyy more, that they were going to have to do some things that made those guys comfortable. And I think that adjustment really tells you that a big part of this isn't just the drops. It's the adjustments in route running. It's the reading of coverage. It's finding, I think Andy Reid used the term, Rashee Rice is becoming more Patrick friendly, which to me tells you he's in the wrong spots, And so sometimes when you're trying to throw the football downfield and you're trying to use more time to have longer developing plays, you're relying on receivers to make adjustments down the field for you. And it seems as if their offense became a lot smoother when that variable was removed, when it wasn't just about, hey, we got this great thing dialed up for Patrick to make this huge chunk play. It was more like throw the ball for 3 yards and see what we can get.
Yeah, they did. Listen, they got away. We've had the comments about Justin Watson getting all the touches. Eric, MVS had one. How do you do worse than 0 for no yards? You have one catch for -1. That's true, but he did have a key block, right? Like that. That was an important part of the equation, which I do think should not be like he didn't sit and pout and moan, and even there's a lot of people putting out the all-22 gift that shows him being open on that play, and instead of just standing there Deontay Johnson style, watching the play and pouting, he gets in the play and makes a block and helps spring Rashee Rice for a touchdown. So listen, let's give some props to what Marquez Valdez-Scantling did do very well, but that's the fear, right? Addition by subtraction. I'd like to believe that this is the direction they're going. The snap count for Rashee Rice has been going up, right? That's been happening. And I think this is the culmination. Jeff's right. When Andy Reid points out that he hadn't been in the right spot, I think Andy Reid's making it clear. I hear everybody saying more Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice has got some work to do too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the consolidation of snaps has been something that we've talked about, right? And they've done it at times. And when they've done it, again, this is where I think that the worry and the consternation comes in. When they've consolidated the receiving core, generally speaking, down to Skyy Moore, MVS, Justin Watson, and Rashee Rice, the offense has done better. The problem is they backslide on this all the time, right? They sneak Kadarius Toney games into there. They sneak, I'm trying to think of, there was some Justin Ross mixed in. There was some, Richie James mixed in at times. And I think that that's always the worry. The worry ends up being, I think that I do think there's if you can get in there where, kind of, and you look at the snap counts are anywhere between 45 and 55% for MV, all those guys, I think that this will be a functional receiving core. The question is can Andy keep from touching the stove every once in a while? I mean, that's like he does these things where he messes around. And I think Kadarius Toney's one where, we all like to root for our predictions. The problem is when you have control over the inputs to the results of your predictions, as Andy does, right? We remember in the offseason, he said that Kadarius Toney was number one wide receiver material. He said that about Tyreek Hill back in 2017 when they cut Jeremy Maclin. And Andy, like, there's always like a little bit of an impetus to want to back into, to make. I mean, look at the Jets, right? The Jets kept Zach Wilson around in large part because there was a sliver of hope that after a couple years of Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson would be functional and that draft pick wouldn't look so bad on the ledger of Joe Douglas, Robert Salah, and that royally screwed their season not having a real backup quarterback. And I wonder that there's an issue. That's the thing with Kadarius Toney. Like, this offense always functions better the fewer snaps Kadarius Toney gets. And the problem is Andy Reid has a vested interest in many ways to play Kadarius Toney. And so that there's always going to be that like conflict between the evidence-based approach and the vibes-based approach for Andy.
Listen, people know that I think Skyy Moore has limits, right, on what he can do. Some people might go, I had somebody tell me, like, you were right about hating on Skyy Moore. I'm like, I didn't hate on Skyy Moore. I want to be clear about that. I don't hate anybody, okay? I just didn't see where he could be as good as they were talking him up. But I've seen some comments about Skyy Moore. I mean, to me, he's taken a few strays here tonight because I don't know what he did wrong, right? Like, his snap count was down, and he caught all three targets thrown his way because we saw him on the shallow cross, which people have mentioned a couple of times here. It didn't get him a first down, but on 3rd and 21, deep in your own end zone, there aren't a lot of great plays, right? But they gave him a chance, got a couple of blockers in front of him. He got half the yardage, gave him a shot to at least punt out of there. If he catches all three targets, that's an improvement, Jeff. I don't want to spend too long on Skyy Moore, but I just think that's a little bit unfair for him. That drag stuff, I keep saying the Wes Welker route tree is what he should be running, and that's what we did see a little bit more of for him. And that's coaching to a guy's strength. I think that's Eric. Quit touching the hot stove thinking he's gonna, go deep. Just run the stuff that he can do. That was simplifying things, as you've said a couple of times here tonight. But Skyy Moore, I don't think needs to be a villain, right? None of these guys need to be villains. They just need to be used how they can actually perform.
Yeah, well, I think you're the one who's always quoting Brian Waters from back in the day about coaches putting you in the right positions or giving you an opportunity to do your best work. And that really is the reality of Skyy Moore and to Kadarius Toney and all these guys, really, when you think about it. It's just there is this disconnect that I've become to accept about this year's offense that is really about, as Eric pointed out, not just Andy wanting to touch the hot stove, but really being in the position now. He's almost a victim of his success, where you've had this phenomenal quarterback for so many years and all these great numbers, all this great success. You're going to start thinking you can do anything with anybody. And in reality, you have to start looking at what you have and accepting what they really are. And really the limitation of this group should be what drives the play calling, not the possibilities, right? It's just Andy has this sense of like everybody can do anything if we just put them in the right spot. And it's just that after 11 games, we know that's not the case. And I think hopefully this was the game where they began to come around to that. I talked about the Buffalo Bills the last couple of weeks, that some of their frustrations can yield blessings in that now James Cook is a bigger part of the offense. It's not just Josh go out there and make it happen. And so the Chiefs are going to be all right. We all know that. But to win a championship this year, they're going to have to make some tweaks. And we've mentioned the loss of Eric Bieniemy. Having someone like Eric Bieniemy in the room who will speak truth to power would be very helpful in a situation like this. I love Matt Nagy and Blay Meyer, all these other guys who've been in the room forever. A lot of these guys are probably like Andy's got, and whatever he wants to do, we're going to go along with it.
Yeah, too many yes men. But I think Eric Bieniemy was an Andy Reid's guy, but I think he clearly was willing to get after some guys. And that's been a common theme. And I think it's certainly, we're going to find out one day somebody will write a book or in an interview 5 years after Patrick Mahomes is done playing, he'll talk about, well, I really miss this, that maybe if that's the case. Right. But, I think that is something to consider. What do we expect from Rashee Rice moving forward, Eric? Like, are they going to feed him the ball? Is this the evolution that's there? And Andy finally, said, okay, you did it right, kid. And I got your back. Or was Andy Reid's comments on Monday about, him being more, what was it, Jeff?
Patrick friendly.
Patrick friendly. Is that a sign that, like, slow down, we did this because we didn't have other guys?
I think it's a little bit of that, right? I think that he right now he has 527 yards, 5 touchdowns through 11 games. They got 6 games left, so to get to 1,000, it would probably be a haul for him. I think he gets to 850, 900, and that's going to be a pretty good rookie season. Probably one of the best rookie seasons that we've seen out of an Andy Reid wide receiver since Deshaun Jackson, right? So, that all told is pretty good. This is not an offense, though. I mean, or hasn't been an offense over the past 2 seasons that has gone out of its way, to feature wide receivers. So I'm skeptical that they're going to, but I do think that he'll continue to be kind of the top dog in that regard. I think the question has to be like, who against whom does it come? Does it like Justin Watson remains a guy who's like getting targets and earning targets, but isn't necessarily being productive. MVS is a guy that can earn targets, and Skyy Moore can't earn that many targets. So it's a process of elimination thing. But I think what will happen is the games that Rice plays well, it'll look like Sunday, and the games that Rice doesn't play well or isn't factored in, and there are other plays, the left hand in that offense, so to speak. I think that in the games where Rice is not featured or Rice is not productive, I still think it's going to be one of those where the other receivers aren't going to be able to step up, and we're going to ask, why aren't they throwing to Rashee Rice?
He's on pace for the season, Jeff, for 814 yards and 8 touchdowns. What do you think he finishes up with? What do you think what do you think it's going to look like when it's all said and done?
Probably close to that. I think I'd probably bet on 700 the way he's trending. And that's just because, again, the routes he's running lead me to believe that there are only so many situations they trust him in as far as throwing the football. Like you think about that throw that Pat made to Travis Kelce when he, dropped it in between 3 different defenders. It was definitely a risky throw, but he trusts Travis Kelce to make the play. Like I don't think Rashee Rice is at that level with him, and I also expect that the more teams can take that away too. I mean, the stuff he's running, it really comes down to, can you tackle? He's done a great job of running without the catch, but if he's catching a hitch and getting stopped for 3 yards, or if he's catching a shallow cross and getting hit after 5 yards, it's not going to yield the kind of production that he put up in this game. So I'd be a little bit leery about getting too crazy about the numbers he can put up doing that kind of stuff, because the longer he plays, the more the book's going to be out on him.
By the way, I think Matt put up that's only just 175 more yards. He's at 527 right now, 527 and 5. So, I think he will go above that. I'm gonna listen. I'd love to tell you he's gonna do this 6 more times, and he's gonna bring home 1,200 yards when it's all said and done. I don't think that's going to happen. I would love to see it happen. I can't say that it wouldn't be a positive if it did happen, but I think he's gonna. I think the 900-ish mark, I think is probably where he's going to be. But I think it's of note, and we can talk about Travis Kelce here as well, who is on pace now. Now, he missed a game, but 1171, let's call it 1,208. He's on pace for, we are kind of seeing Rashee Rice maybe starting to become, which I think is a good thing, and I think will prolong Travis Kelce's career. We're starting to see him maybe, could we, or maybe I'll ask it this way, could we see him becoming the equal to Travis Kelce down the stretch? Would they be a better football team if he was?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I mean, having somebody that they can go to, I think that the only issue of the complementary part is that Rice does not appear to be kind of that deep threat, even like the contested catch guy that we all thought he was coming out of college, right? Where like not a lot of Rashee Rice's stuff is down the field. It's crossers, it's underneath stuff, it's yak. I mean, this team, and I know everybody's going to give MBS crap, but like they need somebody to actually catch the deep ball, right? And they're the Eagles, for example, were a team, and I know Sam McDowell wrote about this. They were daring the Chiefs to go over the top a couple weeks ago, and like that was the true part of the compliment between Hill and Kelce was Hill could go over the top of the defense and Kelce could run underneath. And one of the reasons in 21 that it wasn't as effective when you watch that offense was because defenses were just like, look, you're not going over the top, Tyreek. So I think with that alleviated, like they still need, and I think that that's why they try Justin Watson a lot. I think that that's why MBS is on the field as much as he is. They still need, I think, a deep threat, and I don't think Rice provides that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I think the real question you should be asking is, do you think Rashee Rice can expand his game to the point where he is, as Eric said, catching the ball in all different parts of the field, where he's doing things to where a defense would say, you know what, we've got to find a way to deal with this guy, and not just say, okay, when he's on the field and Travis on the field, here's what we're going to get. I think the whole point of Andy's offense is that you have so many different guys who can do so many different things that it puts a defense on its heels. But if he just becomes the guy who's going to run 3 routes, the defense is going to know what's coming.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. But I also think that, Andy Reid said a number of times that Juju was the counter to Travis Kelce that allowed him to work the other side. And I think that is kind of the role for Rashee Rice. I had somebody on Monday, calling, well, he's going to start running the go routes. Not really. I mean, that's not what the 40 times says.
Yeah.
Like,
He'd be doing it now if he could do it.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a role for multiple receivers, and Valdez-Scantling does, like, you still have to cover him. The problem is the difference is you don't have to cover him with one of your best corners, right? And you don't really have to, our guy can't keep up with him. So what? We just got to send somebody down there in case a miracle occurs and he actually catches one. But I think they still need that guy to take the top off the defense. That's the threat to catch it all the time. That's not going to happen this year. They proved last year that they can do it with MVS running the goes and Juju and Travis Kelce working the underneath. If Rashee Rice can do that, then I think they've got plenty of what they need. By the way, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, with free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews. Plus, every project that comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you keep your business safer. No unnecessary, costly delays, no liability problems when Gann Asphalt and Concrete's got a bright striped, smooth parking lot. Go to GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Red Gold and Bold podcast. What do you think Kelce ends up with this year? Like I mentioned, he's on pace for just under 1,208. Does that feel that way to you? Last year on the season, he put up 600-yard games, two more 90-plus. This year, only 2 100-yard games, only 1 more over 90. Is the slowing continue as we move forward? Do other guys start to phase him out, Jeff, as far as, not like he's not going to get the ball, but is it time to start planning on Travis Kelce, the downslope of his career?
Well, I think he's already in the downslope. I mean, that's pretty much, he's 34 years old. He's not the same player he was at that 25. But, you look at his numbers, his productivity this year, it's really been about, 3 games that you mentioned, the Chargers game, the Bears game, and this game he's really gotten off, and then everything else has been about 40, 50 yards on average. And I expect that probably to continue, that he'll probably have a big game here or there, and have games where teams are going to take him away. I mean, the best option any team has in defending this offense starts with limiting what he does. And that's what the Eagles said. That's what every other team that's coming here and played against him have said, that you have to really deal with him first. And so, I think, look at the 2 big plays he had in the game. One was a trick play, the double reverse pass. The other one was a throw that was in the 3 defenders. That was an amazing throw and catch situation, but it was a forced play. And so he's not getting the kind of easy stuff that he used to get, and he's not taking the easy stuff and breaking the tackles and getting whatever, taking a 5-yard play, a 5-yard catch and turn it into a 15-yard game. Like, I think those days are few and far between and what's coming now. But again, it's if they use him in the right way, he should be opening up everybody else just by being on the field. So I think that's really the larger goal for this offense is how can we take what teams are doing to him and open up everybody else.
By the way, we've had a couple of questions about Ross. Is anybody expecting anything? Eric, do you expect anything out of Ross coming down the stretch run?
Well, it's kind of confusing because they cut John Ross off of the retirement list, and then Justin Ross has the charges against him dropped apparently. So I mean, Justin Ross was serving like a purpose for this team as like a special teams player and an occasional alley-oop guy, but I'd be surprised now that this has happened. He was sort of more of an internet sensation than he was a real wide receiver for this team. And so I'd be surprised, if he did anything the rest of the way. I honestly, we just talked, for 15 minutes about this, this receiving core being more condensed. I don't know why you'd add somebody, to that list.
Yeah, they can't put Ross back into the mix, can they? I mean, Ross needs to be an inactive, Jeff, doesn't he?
Well, is he still on the commissioner's list? Has that changed?
Well, I think the people are expecting. I don't think he's been taken off yet. And if they do take him off, it won't happen until, or if the Chiefs get the opportunity to, if whatever they're saying is won't happen until, game day. Nobody ever makes their moves until right before the game. But I don't even think, if he's not taken off, he what did he have, a plea agreement and everything there? If he is taken off, you still don't put him back out there, right? You have to move forward. He can't miss all this time and be like, oh yeah, he's back up to speed. But Rashee Rice, who's been playing every week, isn't Pat friendly. Come on, what are we doing?
Well, he wasn't a factor to begin with. Like Eric said, he got one pass that I remember, and that's pretty much it. And that is, I mean, you've already got enough guys you're trying to figure out what to do with. You don't need one more guy to throw in the mix and try to justify he's on our roster. We have high hopes for him. Let's do something with him as far as a package. I mean, I think the guys that they have right now are enough to move forward. And unless I miss something, to me, I don't know, is he going to be here next year? He's trending towards being a different part of the NFL by next season.
Yeah. I mean, I think to this point, when you got 7, you don't really have 5. I think that, we asked that question, is this the quarterback? If you think you got 2 quarterbacks, you really just don't even have 1, right? Well, the question was, if you can think you got to keep 7 wide receivers, is it because you really don't have 5? To this point, the answer has been, you don't have 5, unless we see something else really step forward. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. They give up 120 plus, a big 63-yard run. However, the rest of it's 22 for 60. Eric, are you concerned about the run defense for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I'm not. The run defense is, I think, part of the design of this defense. And so, the breaking off the big play is big. And we saw that, by the way. We saw that in the Chargers game with Joshua Kelly. Saw that this game with Jacobs. In both games, it just got the Chiefs the ball back more quickly and helped them sort of continue to move forward. So in that regard, I'm not that concerned. They've been in this kind of range kind of every single year in Spagnuolo's era, a bad run defense with a okay to now really good pass defense. And that, generally speaking, is kind of the way to win in the NFL. So I don't have a huge issue with it. No.
Where's your concern, Jeff?
I think it's been, for me, it's not a huge red flag, but it's certainly the only chink in the armor that I've seen from this unit all season long. And it was a recipe for the Broncos when they beat them. As Eric mentioned, you saw the Chargers have success running the football early in that game. You saw what Josh Jacobs did. I imagine, obviously the Eagles, we knew they were going to run it. So I imagine what's coming up here, a lot of teams that are probably go with the same recipe, because the best way to deal with a team that's good in coverage and wants to get after the passer and blitz is to keep them out of those situations. And so I think the smart teams are going to keep trying to pound the football. Somebody mentioned was Nick Bolton coming back. That's a huge absence for them right now. Drew Tranquill's played well in his absence. I think it's pretty obvious that he's the hammer in that defense. He's the heartbeat of it when he's out there. And so, yeah, I certainly expect teams to continue trying to run it and trying to control possessions. And that's what we're going to see.
They're 19th against the run. They're 4th against the pass. They're 4th in total defense by yards, and they're 3rd in points allowed. I know it's really easy to look at that, and for Chiefs fans, and when you just want to make yourself believe, to say it doesn't matter. It's no problem. And I agree with what Eric said. I agree with what both of you said. I don't think it's like, oh my God, there's this here's Achilles' heel. Let's aim the arrow there, and we've got him. I don't think it's that simple, but I do think the offense better be good. It's a bigger problem when the offense isn't good
or clean.
What's that?
Or clean. Penalties and turnovers on a part of the process.
That's a great point too. You can't be giving short fields away. You can't be shooting yourself in the foot. But I mean, if they can score like they did against the Raiders, where they went 3 straight trips down the field, 70 plus for a touchdown, whether it's lightning fast like it used to be in 18 and 19, or just grind it all the way down the field. Either way, if they can do that, it's not that big a deal. But if the offense is sputtering and a team can run the ball and they limit how many possessions, Eric, that they get, then that's where it does become a problem. I definitely agree. You throw to win, you run when you're winning. But if a team gets to winning and then they run, that's how they finish the game, especially with an offense that isn't quick strike, doesn't feel like, okay, 1:30 in a timeout before a halftime is obvious points. That's when it could become a problem. I really don't think they were that bad against the Raiders, but I don't want to see this trend of giving up the one big long run continue either.
Yeah, I'm of a different belief because I don't actually think the Denver game certainly is the leak, but the fact of the matter is the defense did everybody talks about the Denver game and talks about the run defense in that game. But the run defense in the Denver game was the 5th worst thing about the Chiefs that day. Their offense stunk. They had penalties. They had, Andy wasn't calling good plays and turned the ball over penalties. And then the run defense was kind of the last, death nail. They had a chance. I mean, if McCole Hardman doesn't muff the punt inside the 10-yard line, they have the ball down 5 ready to go win that game. And, the long runs for touchdowns, to me, that those aren't that big of a deal. I mean, the big deal is when, to your point, when the other team gets a lead and they can kind of grind it out against the Chiefs. But that hasn't necessarily the week 1 game. I guess there was a little bit of a ground and pound by the Lions, especially once they gave up the ball at the end there. But the explosive plays or whatever, to me, in the sense that you at least give the ball back to the offense. So it is an issue, but among all the things that you can have a problem with as a football team, I just think it's so far down the list.
I disagree because
I'm with you.
especially on you give it back to the offense. Well, you can't trade 8 for 7s and make up a 10-point deficit. Okay. And they're not going to get 8 every time. So to me, I'm with you on the Bronco game. That one doesn't concern me because there was no big play. What concerns me about the Raiders was a commitment, what could concern me. It doesn't, as we saw, they won by 2 scores, right? But what would be concerning for me is if the offense doesn't have a day, then the Raider game is the Bronco game plus a big play, right? What to me made it okay. And when I don't worry about it is if they're fixing the offense, because then they can go get points. They can drag a team out of the run game because they're trailing. The Raiders had to get away from it. If they stay out in front, they don't get away from it. And so when you pop that big one with that ground game, and then you're still keeping Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, that's what's scary to me. If the offense no-showed, then the game looks just like the 24-9 Bronco game.
Yeah. Josh Jacobs averaged 5.5 yards a carry despite having a 63-yard run, though. So, I mean, if you look at that game and you add in this,
but that's the point. Williams averaged 3.1 for the Broncos. Now throw in if he has a 60-yard run, it's a complete ass kicking. That's what I'm getting at.
But I just don't see it that they're not getting gashed. They're giving up more. They're not getting gashed. They're giving up a couple big plays this year, and for the most part are holding, or they're not giving up like 7-yard chunks is kind of what is my point. Like they've given up some long gains and they've they're not getting like 2-yard losses all the time because that's kind of not how their D line is. I mean, Derek Notty's not very good. And, they don't really have that nose tackle, the Dontari Poe type, but like, okay, if you have a 63-yard run, so on one of those carries, so do the math a little bit, that's going to be 47 yards, right, on the remaining 19 carries. That's terrible. So I don't really know, like, I think it's fine. I honestly think it's like a good gamble for them to make.
Jeff, I want to get your thoughts because Gary, maybe I'm doing a bad job of connecting the dots because Gary says 5 turnovers, Petro, meaning the 5 turnovers against the Broncos. Yes, that's the bad offense.
But that's like the point, though. Like,
hey, let Jeff, because
the point I was going to make is that when you want to, and I think what Eric's talking like 2020, 2021 Chiefs, where it's not that big a deal because you're going to get the points anyway. In reality, when you want to play to your defense, what they're doing a lot more of, it does hurt you when teams commit to running the football because just as the offense wants to throw the football down the field, the defense wants to rush the passer. They want to blitz. And when you can't do that stuff, you look at the Detroit game, you look at the Broncos game, and you look at this the Eagles game, and look at what happened when those teams started running the football. It really drained that defense. It took something out of them, and it changed the momentum of the game. And those are the kind of situations you don't need a 50-yard run for that to happen. If you're getting 2 or 3 first downs, if you're banging on guys, trust me, Chris Jones doesn't want to defend the run for 50 plays. He doesn't want to do that.
The Chiefs gave up 238 yards against the Eagles. Like all of these problems.
The margin for error is slim. Is what I'm saying. The whole point of that is that it's another factor in a close game.
Yeah, but that's like burning my house down and then bitching about the fact that I have inflammatory elements like in one of my
parallel
counters.
Don't
like the games that the Chiefs have lost, they've lost because their offense sucked. Like let's just be honest, right? The Eagles game, if they put one foot in front of the other on offense, they win that game going away. The Lions game, if they don't throw a pick 6 to Brian Branch in his first game in the NFL,
but they did. They did.
That's the whole very point.
Yeah,
that's the whole. They've consistently done that, and now because in one game they didn't do it, it's all fixed. Like, listen, I'm not trying to preach doom and gloom, and I want to come back to what the premise of what I think both Jeff and I are saying. If they're going to hang 31 and not turn the ball over, no. It's not a problem. If they're going to possess the football, it's not a problem. But if we look at the totality of the season, they have done that. They have constantly had penalties.
But that's the problem, not the run defense.
Yeah, but when you do that, then you give the other team the ball, and then they soak up all the clock. They take away all the opportunities. You lose possessions. You give them short fields, and they score more points. Yes, no one is saying
it matters more. It makes it matter more.
Travis Etienne in week 2, 12 carries, 40 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. That one seemed okay to me. Let me find these other ones. Like the Bears when they came, Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert, a combined 69 yards on the ground. Like we're talking about like the 5th problem on the Chiefs.
But it's a problem. It can be a problem. That's the whole point.
It is.
It's an annoyance. It's not a problem.
Well, listen.
So it drops until it became a 8-game, 9-game phenomenon.
They're not playing the Bears in the playoffs, so you can wipe that mutt off. I don't even.
They are playing the Jags in the playoffs, and they shut Etienne's ass down in week 2.
Listen, the point. And
that was a game their offense turned the ball over. Their Richie James fumbled punts. They were ass on offense in that game, and their run defense did perfectly fine. The Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl if they put one foot in front of the other on offense, and we're not even going to talk about the run defense. And so that's my point.
And so you're convinced that the offense is fixed. That there's no chance they'll have to win. They'll have to win some kind of 16-13 fest where the defense has spent 36 minutes out there and is now staring down having to get the other team off the field for their offense to come back out there. You don't think there's any chance they end up with that?
My point is they don't have to be the 2000 Ravens in the run game for this defense to A, be great, because this defense still is great, and B, to win the Super Bowl.
So you have
all
no
these games
concern.
are talking about. The game against the Jags was a rock fight. They had like 8 possessions in that
All right,
game.
so then let's say this.
Nick Bolton was playing then too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Bolton is Tracy Simeon. We've seen that Drew Tranquil has come in, and their defense has not skipped a beat. Let's move on from that one.
I would disagree. They have skipped a beat because they were like 12 against the run, and now they're down to 19. They have absolutely gotten worse against the run without him. I mean, I don't think either Jeff or I are saying, "Oh my God, this team sucks. They're not going anywhere." But what I'm wanting you to say, or what I want to know, is if what you're saying is they can't lose. Is that what you're telling me?
No, what I'm saying is when we write the obituary on a Chiefs season, if they don't win this Super Bowl, the run defense is not going to be anywhere close to the reasons why they lose these games.
If they see the Ravens in the playoffs,
the run defense was not the reason they lost to the Bengals in 21. Even though Mixon ripped off a couple runs in that OT,
not 21.
The reason they lost that playoff game was because Patrick Mahomes looked like he got hit in the head during halftime. Those are we got to worry about the key issues here. The key issues.
21.
This is a rounding error for this team, the run defense.
If they see the Ravens in the playoffs, the way they're defending the run right now, they're going to lose. I will tell you that.
If the Ravens see the Chiefs the way they pass the ball, it'll be fine. The Chiefs will kick the Ravens' ass in the passing game defensively, and when they get a 3rd and 7, because the run, that's how the run game goes. It's 8, 6, 2, 2. Oh my God, it's 3rd and 6. Lamar Jackson against this Chiefs defense, not gonna be pretty for them. I think it's fine. I think that they're making the right gambles on defense.
Yeah, listen. Again, I think and I love this one. Chris says, "Agree, Eric." Of course, all the apologists are certainly don't ever question anything. Chiefs run defense is not a top 3 issue. Then what are the top 3? Is it Justin Watson? Are we going to sit here and piss and moan and crap in our pants all night about Justin Watson every time
the Chiefs' top issues? The Chiefs,
he's only a problem.
Let's go on their production meeting, Soren. Let's go round the horn, and let's each of us give our top 3 problems for the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, go.
All right, so before we start, can we agree that this is a problem, or are we not even going to agree with that?
I think. I don't think it's that big of a problem, no.
Okay, so you think it's a problem. You just don't think it's that big of a problem.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so my top 3 problems for the Chiefs in order are: 1, their tackles get penalized way too often, and they're in long yardage situations because of 2 tackles that they've combined to pay $30 million this year. 2. That's problem number 1. Sets them back. It's hidden stuff. It's why those guys are both negative WAR players on this team. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that the Chiefs don't have a wide receiver that can get them a bucket on 3rd and medium or longer. That's problem number 2. That matters a ton. Problem number 3 is they do not have depth at the skill positions. That's part of problem 2, but it also extends to running back. It extends to tight end. Last year, they had Jody.
Can't even come up with anything.
Yeah.
Last year, they had 3 tight ends that could actually thread a defense. Noah Gray, by the way, still a top 5 player in the receiving core for this team. They had Jody Fortson, who teams gave a shit about, and they had Travis. This year, Travis is slower. They have no Jody Fortson. So the 3 tight end sets include a guy in Blake Bell who is slower than me, folks. And that's the top 3 problem with this team.
I love
They're all on offense. They're all on offense.
Yeah, not having any receivers, but then you brag about a guy being 5th on a team that doesn't have receivers. That's awesome. Listen, number 1, consistent threat at the wide receiver position. That's problem number 1. And I think there's a chance.
Number 2. Thanks for copying me, Petro.
I think Rashee Rice. What do you want me to do? The punting is the problem. What do you want me to say? Number 1 is having a consistent threat at wide receiver. I think number 2 is the penalties, all over the place, but mostly just on the offensive side. And number 3 is the run defense. I mean, it's not cataclysmic by any stretch of the imagination, but it's something I think they want to be better. And I agree with Jeff. I think Nick Bolton is a big part of it. And I think you see that. And I love Drew Tranquill, but I think they need Nick Bolton. Jeff, what's your three?
It's the same three as you. It's the same three as you. Again, and the whole point is not that this is some huge problem. Eric's right. It's not some pressing need. Oh my God! But if we're going to, celebrate this defense as being elite, you have to be willing to take criticism and to say that they're sitting here with a 19th ranked run defense. It's all good. That's going to be a problem when you start playing teams that can run the football effectively. And if you turn it over, if you drop a pass, you can have bad days.
Yeah.
The reason they lost the Broncos game was because their offense couldn't, like their wide receivers could not catch anything.
Again,
they hammered. The Broncos scored 24 points in that game.
But I think that's 80. I think we're 80% on the same page. We're not like, if the offense sucks, yes, this is a problem. This hasn't been. Listen, I was on your side of the fence in this argument 2 or 3 years ago because they were scoring 30 every game, 33 points a game. They're not putting up 33 a game. They score 30 once, and Eric's back in 2018 mode. Oh, you can't stop this team.
This team has the same record. This team has a better record right now than when they won the Super Bowl in 2019 at this time. They have a better record right now than at this time last year, I think. I can't know. They lost the Bengals this week last year.
All the games had a sprained ankle. There's a lot of different factors to that. The one thing
when they win this week against Green Bay, they will have had the same record now as they had at this time last year, despite the offense being ass compared to last year. And the run defense is a problem when everything else goes wrong. And if everything else goes wrong, newsflash, they're not winning shit. So
But Eric, aren't we beyond the I didn't know we were judging whether or not they got the training wheels off. I know we're not judging this team about whether or not it can get to 10 wins. We're judging it about what it means to win a championship. And they ran into a problem with the Bengals, right? Like they ran into a problem with the Bucks. The question is, will this be a problem against better teams? And Jeff and I both said, we don't think it's that big a deal, just if they're not scoring. And there's been a lot of times this year they haven't been scoring. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Let's get to Andy Reid real quick. By the way, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They're thrilled to have brought you that last conversation. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear since 1994. Don't risk liability. In your parking lot, leave a great first and last impression with a smooth, brightly striped parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete online at GannAsphalt.com. Andy Reid is now the winningest coach for 2 teams all time. Jeff, he's got 2 Super Bowl championships, 4 conference championships. He's 4th all-time in regular season wins. He's 2nd in playoff wins. He's 12th all-time in win percentage, and that number's actually been going up here since the Mahomes era began. Where's he headed towards? What's this, since he just went by another milestone? He went by Tom Landry earlier this year. Where's he going to end up on the list?
Good chance of being in the top 5, depending how long he coaches. I would say that in my lifetime of covering the NFL, like Bill Belichick's the best coach I've ever seen. I think Jimmy Johnson's in that category. Bill Parcells, Tony Dungy, but he probably would be in my top 5 right now. Just guys I know. Not talking about Vince Lombardi and everybody else who would be in this conversation. Paul Brown, but I would say the modern era, he could easily be the top 5 based on what I've seen. And it's not just the numbers alone would get him there. I think the other guys I mentioned were innovators, were just amazing coaches. I mean, Parcells, Dungy, and Jimmy Johnson, they're all Hall of Famers. So Andy's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Now I'll put him in there over the Mike Shanahans, the Bill Cowers, people like that.
I'm with you. The game is so different from the Curly Lambeau, Vince Lombardi, George Halas, Paul Brown days, and they were all great in their moment and moving the game forward. I don't know. I mean, there's so many things a head coach deals with now that those guys didn't deal with. That I don't mean to throw shade at the Packers with them coming right around the corner. What Vince Lombardi running a sweep 26 times a game was offensive brilliance back in those days. It's a little different ball game right now. Where does he end up in your mind, Eric?
Yeah, it's tough for me having, born in 1986. So it's like I know Shula. I think Chuck Noll belongs in that conversation when you think about the longevity, the 4 Super Bowls in 1 decade, with a quarterback that's like, frankly, like earmuffs just okay, in my opinion.
Bill Walsh, by the way, should be in there too. Yeah,
Bill Walsh. Yeah, and I do agree. I think Jeff, like, it really, despite the last conversation, Jeff shows how really great football mind he is. Jimmy Johnson is in that. If Jimmy Johnson didn't get stupidly fired by Jerry Jones, like, who knows what that team would have done, because he was an innovator the same way that Andy Reid in a lot of ways is an innovator. So I think you got to put Jimmy. I think like the range is probably, like, he's probably never going to touch Belichick. I think he's never going to touch the mystique of Lombardi in that way, just because of the kind of how that went in people's minds. But I think a reasonable range is 3 to 7.
By the way, I have to put this up there. Terry, the Best Cheese podcast is so good. My wife is now watching. Hello, Mrs. Terry. We appreciate you joining the festivities here tonight. I think you guys have lost your mind. I think he's already firmly in the top 5. And I think he's fighting to move into the top. I think he's probably knocking on the door of 3. I mean, he's had the same kind of effect, I think, offensively that a Bill Walsh has had. He's had longevity that Bill Walsh couldn't. I think there's something for the guys that grind and grind and grind and just keep having winning season after winning season. I think there are a lot of guys that look at the team and go, like Bill Parcells, like, here's a big burst. We're good. Now I'm out, boys. I'm checking out. Like, you can.
Yeah, he's the Mike Brown of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he
with more championships, but like, the NBA, like, he was kind of like, I like the chase. I don't like the dating.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for 14 with the Eagles, and now what are we at, 13 now, 12 with the Chiefs, whatever it is. 13 to 23 would be 12 years with the Chiefs. I mean, I don't know, man. Especially if he rings it one more time. I honestly. I think Bill Belichick, the longer he stays, and I've said this for a long time, the more he starts looking Chuck Noll-esque. And nobody puts Chuck Noll in the conversation for one of the best. They go, oh, wow, he had a great group, and he wrote it, and the system back then, no free agency, it all allowed you to keep all that talent together. Nobody talks about Chuck Noll being the best in that conversation. And Bill Belichick is barreling towards, I'm not saying out of the conversation, but
yeah, but all great coaches.
One question I have, though, and like, this is where I get a little worried. And now we have like Don Shula in 1993. They started 9-2. They lost the next 7 or whatever, or 6 or 5 or whatever. They missed the play. Like, all these coaches, Belichick had an 18-point lead in Indianapolis. They blew that in the conference title game. Like, so every one of these coaches has had meltdowns. The one issue I have with Reid, and I do think Andy's probably 3rd right now in my mind, and move up. I'm just giving a few other people some kudos there. But we do have 28-point lead blown against Indianapolis. We have the 18-point lead blown against Tennessee. You have the 18-point lead blown against the Bengals. The math guy in me says, well, if you're in the playoffs that many times, just the law of large numbers means you're going to mess up a lead like that. But I do think Andy Reid's like penchant for melting down big leads like that in big spots is, like, when you look at Belichick and the 6 rings, I'm sorry, Brady has 7 rings. You have the 6 rings for Belichick. Andy Reid, without melting down those games, right? End of the AFC title game in 2018, all that kind of stuff. That's where I look and I say he could have been the best. And if he doesn't have these epic meltdowns in those games, he could have been. And I think he's those meltdowns away from being number 1 all time.
He's got one meltdown with Patrick Mahomes. That was against the Bengals. The other ones, I think you give as much credit for how did you get out to that big a lead with what you had. The quarterback, Joe Gibbs got put up there. I know this. I don't know who the Mount Rushmore is. I just know Joe Gibbs is on it. 3 championships with 3 quarterbacks, none of which were going to the Hall of Fame.
Mark Rippon was awful, like, basically every year except for the year they won the Super Bowl. So yeah,
listen, I'm gonna beat my own drum. Andy Reid's record with Alex Smith and Donovan McNabb is now the reason why he's great, because he's got his Hall of Famer and he's winning all the championships, and he outperforms everybody without it. You could sit there and be like, is Andy Reid the reason why Donovan McNabb doesn't win championships? No, that's been clearly written. It was Andy Reid propping up Donovan McNabb, and that hurts my Syracuse heart to say. But Andy Reid was the more influential one on that one, and that's history proved that. He was 32 years old when he went to Washington and went to play for another Hall of Fame coach. He didn't piss a drop. Okay. And then Alex Smith was pretty good. And as soon as he got his Hall of Famer, he's taken off.
So you think Andy Reid was better than Jimmy Johnson as a coach?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, you have that second. You have the stanza where, and now I know Marino,
Jimmy Johnson did take the worst Hall of Famer in the history of the game to 2 championships. So I'm very high on Jimmy Johnson.
But you also have Jimmy Johnson to your point, Petro, in the second stanza of his career. Now, Marino was at the end, but it wasn't like Marino was on. It wasn't like Marino was in this Rodgers year. Marino was in it was 96, so he was in year 12 or 13. And they didn't do really much. Like they made the playoffs and stuff, but they weren't a real threat. I think that's puncturing Jimmy Johnson's kind of legacy. But Jimmy Johnson belongs in the top 10, in my opinion.
As Mac Jones is torpedoing Bill Belichick's legacy right now, in my opinion.
Well, and not only that, but the Browns years you have to factor in.
No, they were an easy foot. No, don't move the team, everybody said. Well, now when you have everything that's happened after Tom Brady, it looks like no. He's just mediocre to poor when he doesn't have Tom Brady. That's
mediocre to poor. He's got 8 rings.
He has as a head coach, he has 6, and he has only made 2 playoffs.
Yeah, he's responsible for 2 others.
1 playoff win.
His work
as a defensive coordinator.
We'll do that on a 2 deep podcast sometime. Are the Packers dangerous? Do you fear the Packers? And what do you feel is going to happen on Sunday, Jeff?
They're very dangerous. I think young teams that start to gain confidence, they have a lot of Houston Texans in them right now. That sense of, our quarterback's playing pretty well. We got some young guys who are starting to believe. Doors opening up to the playoffs. If we win some games here, if you had caught them a couple weeks ago, I would have said this would have been a 14-point win. The Chiefs should still win the game, but it doesn't make me easy on the road. The way Love is playing, they've got a good defense, and so they can cause some problems with their pass rush. I think Rashawn Gary is one of the more underrated edge rushers in this league. So I'd take them 21-20.
You're taking the Packers?
Chiefs 21-20.
Okay, Eric?
The point spread opened 6, 7-ish, 6.5-ish. Now it's kind of down 6, 5.5 in some spots. I kind of agree with that move. I make the game 5.5. Jordan Love looks phenomenal right now. I don't think he's Rodgers-like and, kind of in his first year, but I would be very encouraged if I were Packer fans. And the one thing that they're hurting with is things like run defense and that kind of thing, similar to the Chiefs, of course, in that regard. No, they'll be salty. It's in Green Bay, which is going to be tough for the Chiefs to overcome. I think the Chiefs win by 4, but no, this Packers team should be very encouraged with where they are, especially after Minnesota lost to the Bears last night.
They've won 3 out of 4, 2 in a row. I think you get a lot more street cred for beating the Chargers than you probably deserve these days. It's still like you beat somebody. I don't know how bad they got to get before we don't look at that. They did beat the Lions. That's an impressive win. We'll talk about them later tonight too. But I think they're playing better football, but I think they are what a lot of quarterbacks are, right? I think you got Diet Dak under center with Jordan Love. If you're out in front and it's all going well, like Thanksgiving Day, it's all good. You can hand off when you want to hand off. You can throw when you want to throw. The whole playbook's open. But get down, and you got no shot. This is. In fact, Diet Alex Smith is where Jordan Love is right now. Now, maybe one day in his career he'll be better, but everybody looks good playing from in front. It's the guys that can look good when they got to do it from behind, and he hasn't proven that.
Petro, Jordan Love going into this week was like a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL in like passing metrics in the first half of games, and a top 5 quarterback in the NFL in passing metrics in the second half of games. They came back from 17 down against New Orleans in week 3, back when he was like bad. Like, this isn't like, I don't agree with what you just said. I think it's actually wrong. No.
He's also betting on the Chiefs jumping out to a huge lead.
Yeah, you think he's gonna, if he gets down to the Chiefs, that they're still in the game.
I do. I agree with that. I think he's got the athletic ability and the arm strength to kind of to skunk teams. I think
And I like Jordan Love more than most, but they have no chance of coming back on the Chiefs. The Chiefs don't usually.
Look, the two quarterbacks this year, the young quarterbacks that have impressed me, obviously one with a bullet is CJ Stroud. When you're looking at Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Noah Brown, that's impressive stuff. When you look at Jordan Love, who watched Aaron Rodgers play with Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Alan Lazard, a bunch of veteran players, and have to start your first year with somebody named Dontavius Wicks and somebody named Jaden Reed. Like he's built, like he's the veteran in that group, right? Elevating those players. So to me, it's not a function of like Love not being capable of this stuff. It's like the rest of the offense catching up to what Love was capable of. And they did last week, and they have for a couple weeks now. And I think that I disagree. I mean, I think Jordan Love is kind of like a win in any kind of situations thing. He's not as good as Pat. That's why they're not going to win Sunday. But like I disagree. I think Jordan Love's kind of it for them.
Losses to the Falcons, losses to the Raiders, and a loss to the Broncos before they were what turned things around for the Broncos. I can't help you. I like Jordan Love more than some people did, and I gave him a lot more credit. I think I had the Packers in the playoffs, so maybe I should.
In that Falcons game,
prediction and get excited about. No.
I was at that Falcons game. They were without David Bakhtiari, and they have been all year. They were without Aaron Jones, and they've been. Christian Watson has been a pumpkin this year. He caught like 10 touchdowns last year. He sucks, and like he finally was healthy, and Jordan Love hit him in the chest a few times for some touchdowns lately. And I like those early season games, the inactive list for the Packers was like Pro Bowl running back, wide receiver they spent draft capital on, left tackle that they paid $20 million per snap to, basically down the list. Like he's overcome quite a bit. And now that things are actually getting healthy for them, like that's when he's been emerging. So no, he's not a win no matter what kind of guy, but he's a win with a reasonable support guy.
26-13 Chiefs. 26-13 Chiefs. Remember, we're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. One contractor, all things parking lots. Give them a call at 816-484-3338. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Consumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.